Greetings, everybody. This is Silver Thunder, the extraordinarily ordinary gaming squirrel, and we are back today with another episode of Monster Hunter World, Master Rank palling around in the Guiding Lands. Doing a little bit of grinding, needing to level up my regions here so I can kind of get ready to take on Fatalis eventually, which, whenever I take them on, I'll have to put my first attempt up on the channel and see how quickly I get destroyed. It's definitely a goal that I've been working towards in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I've loved this game so much. I've put almost 500 hours into it, but I have never actually gotten to the final big bad. So yeah, exciting. We're gonna be fighting Glavenus here, as you can see. He's a tough customer, already roaring at me to go away, but I do not heed the warning. I just go ahead and start the fight, and we're going to go ahead and kick things off. One of my favorite monster designs in the whole entire series. Nothing like a big Carnotaur with a sword for a tail. Fun stuff. Love this series so much. Well, it's appropriate that we are playing Monster Hunter today because the subject that we're going to be discussing today is the psychology of grind-heavy games. I know, grind-heavy games? Monster Hunter video? The nerve. Never would this be associated with tough, long grinds or anything like that. But firstly, before we really start talking about a grind, and I assume that if you've clicked on this video, then you probably know exactly what a grind is, and that you don't need, a squirrel to explain it to you. But for those of you who are uninformed, a grind can be best described, it's usually in respect with video games, though sometimes, a career, humans call career, working a job, the daily grind. But a grind in a video game is whenever you are working towards a goal, be it, creating something, a piece of gear, trying to collect resources to build something, basically working, whatever you do to work towards a point of progression in a video game. Monster Hunter, for example, the grind is heavily associated with doing what I'm doing now, and that is hunting monsters, killing them, breaking their parts, that way to get rewarded with certain parts that you can take to the blacksmith and use to create weapons and armor. And, in some cases, other things as well. And the grind is the act of, a lot of times you're having to do these hunts many times over. You have to pick a monster, decide what armor or weapons that you want from that monster, and then keep fighting that monster until you have the parts and the money to make said gear and weapons. Monster Hunter especially has a really long and I think ultimately very satisfying grind loop when it comes to its progression. And you will probably, if you've never played Monster Hunter, or if you've heard like Monster Hunter on like the peripheries of the discussions, you have probably inevitably heard about like the infamous grinds of like older games in the series and things like that. And you probably wonder, well, if the grind is that bad, what keeps people coming back to play Monster Hunter? Like, why subject yourself to that? And I think that really does hit the crux on, how grinding affects our psychology, me as a squirrel, and then for human beings as well, like why? And I think it really is that dopamine hit, for lack of a better word, that you get whenever you finally reach that goal that you've been working towards. You finally, in other games, like get to that level, or finally beat that boss, or finally get to that new area, and you can reflect on it and say, yes, this was not something that was just handed to me. This was something that I really worked for. And honestly, I think Monster Hunter really does this, the aspect of its grind. I don't want to say perfectly because, there's only one perfection in this world, and it's not any of us, and it's not a game. But I really do think that it really has one of the most fully realized kinds of grind out there. Now, like what I was saying before, the games have had a notoriously more difficult grind back in the day. You know, for instance, we're playing Monster Hunter World here, released in 2017, 2018, which is crazy to think about. There's still a part of my old brain that still kind of dwells within 2010. But, so it's hard to believe that this game is approaching a decade old already. But, you know, Monster Hunter World, I feel like, is fairly forgiving with its grind. You can but you can acquire certain monster parts more easily than what you could in the old games. A lot of the monsters from the old games do make returns in newer entries like this one. The game is not as deliberate as, you know, for instance, if I were to kill this Glavenus and get its tail as a reward, I could accomplish that without having to actually cut its tail. Whereas in older Monster Hunter games, in order to get the tail part of a monster that has the corresponding part, you absolutely have to cut the tail. That may not be true for all of them, but I think especially for the oldest ones in the franchise, like Monster Hunter Frontier or DOS or something like that. Not Frontier, Freedom or DOS. You know, those reward tables are a lot less forgiving, and also the percentile chances were much worse in the older games. You know, in there you see like the 1 or 2% drop chances. So what that basically spells out is that you would have a lot of hunts available to you, especially if you were unlucky. Whereas in Monster Hunter World, yes, you have that to an extent, but it's not as, I think, pronounced. I feel like that grinds are significantly shorter in this one, even if you happen to be on the unlucky side of things. So, you know, that goes to say the reason, you know, well, if you are going to participate in a grind to really see something through to the end, one, I think it's going to be dependent on probably your personality. People have different views on how grinds function. Like, for example, I ultimately enjoy grinds. I have days where I really don't want to participate in a grind, and I'm feeling more impatient than normal. And, you know, kind of wanting that instant gratification of getting what I want on, like, the first try. But Monster Hunter balks at that, no matter what entry of the game that you're looking at. But overall, I am a patient individual when it comes to grinds. I can handle the wait. I can handle not getting exactly what I want the first time. Whereas my wife, she is the personality where she finds grinds to be monotonous and very aggravating. She has goals that she has in her mind, and she can get frustrated whenever those goals are obstructed by something that seems arbitrary, I guess, like a grind. I would argue that grind in Monster Hunter is not arbitrary, and it's one of the cornerstones of the experience. But we'll just leave that there for the moment and just continue, you know, what we're analyzing about the grinds, about the individual's personality. So, like I said, it might vary depending on how you fall on the personality spectrum with that. But ultimately, whether you like it or not, grinds are a part of this game and several other games. And I think what makes Monster Hunter grinds so successful, and any other grind to be successful, is it really needs to have good, solid gameplay attached to it. The task will become utterly monotonous if the gameplay attached to it is utterly monotonous as well. Like, something that I think of to be obnoxious would kind of be like resource gathering that you would need to do in MMOs, per se. Now, I know that there are MMO fans out there that would cry foul at that, but that's just my opinion. It's just not something that I have as much patience for. Where, you know, you're going to like a gathering node and just like picking stuff up. You do that in Monster Hunter as well, but the grand majority of your actual grinding in this game is going to be you are engaging with these mechanically deep well designed, both auditorily and visually well designed monsters that are going to keep you engaged during the hunts. You know, the example of this Glavenus here, by all merits, I think that the gear that I have is Monster Hunter equivalent of over-leveled for him. But similarly, if I'm not paying attention, and if I'm not actually watching his movesets and stuff like that, if I'm playing like too carelessly, he could probably 2 or 3 tap my character. Especially since that I'm using a ranged weapon, I have less defense about getting smacked in the face. They say whenever you're playing bow, you're doing it wrong if you're getting hit. Well, I must be doing it wrong a lot then. But still enjoy it. Still my main weapon. I will still never deviate from that path. But, if the gameplay of Monster Hunter was not so darn good, then the grind would be awful. Because you are putting serious time into these games. I mean, like I said, on Monster Hunter World alone, just on the PC, mind you, I have put almost 500 hours into my Steam iteration of the game. But I have more time cumulatively across the consoles that I played it on, PS4, PS5. I just really enjoy them that much. And there are people who, would scoff at that and have playtimes that absolutely dwarf mine, and that enjoy the Monster Hunter grind experience for the same reason. Now, is it all sunshine and rainbows with Monster Hunter World, or Monster Hunter in general's grinds? No, absolutely not. There are, as I said, times where I just do not feel like that I want to engage with the grind mechanic. Once again, getting that instant gratification, me want reward train going, that quickly can make one lose patience with this game. I've been there. I think any Monster Hunter player has been there. And, that would be a cue for you to either, take a break from the game on that day or, move on to a different game and then come back. Monster Hunter is very much about the long haul of things instead of really trying to blitz these grinds, unless if you're doing a challenge run video or something along those lines. But once again, it just really loops back to what really makes the grind compelling. One, the great gameplay, and then two, that sense of accomplishment when you finally distill all of that great gameplay, all of the struggle, all of, the sometimes heartbreaks over the part breaks. When you finally condense that all together and it forms the goal that you're working towards, there's just really not a reward that's quite like that, A comparable experience is to, the Soulsborne games. They have level, they have grinding where, you can kill enemies over and over again to increase your level to get a specific weapon or a piece of armor. And that means, and the funny thing is that the grind loop with that is typically much shorter than Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter, you're looking at about 10 to 20 minutes per hunt, depending on, your skill level and depending on the monster that you're facing and things like that. Sometimes even depending on your weapon. Whereas the Soulsborne, it's a much quicker experience, especially with its bosses. If you're not good at a Soulsborne boss, you're going to get, killed really, really quickly. Whereas in Monster Hunter, yeah, you can get killed quickly as well, but you have multiple chances, usually through at least 3 feints. Investigations on Monster Hunter World vary with that, but you usually have more of a chance to course correct in the middle of a hunt than, say, a Soulsborne boss, where you're kicked out of the boss arena pretty quickly after a good spanking, as it were. So, once again, you have a longer grind loop and a shorter grind loop, but a similar sense of reward because, whenever you're doing the Soulsborne games, and it applies to Monster Hunter as well, as you are trying to learn the boss's patterns, as you're trying to figure out when you can retaliate and you can attack and you can punish the enemy that you're going for, there's a bit of a grind in learning that before it finally, you get the reward of actually beating the boss. And, like I said, it can be very, very compelling. It is very compelling. Otherwise, people wouldn't be coming back to these games. Monster Hunter wouldn't be the #1 selling game for Capcom if that was the case. If that wasn't the case. So yeah, it's very interesting to examine the psychology of these grinds, because I think it really is telling, and I think very humbling. I know it is, at least for me, because it really does expose how much instant gratification really has seeped into. I mean, I say seeped into, it's kind of been there as a universal experience for, humans and also as squirrels. Always gotta have those acorns and other things gathered, and I want the instant rewards of finding them immediately. But it's a core common experience with all of us, that we all want instant gratification. We all want the things that we're working for immediately. We all get incredibly impatient when it comes to these things, and I think partially what makes Monster Hunter such a very unique and awesome experience is that it's one of the games that, in the midst of this, and also in the midst of gaming culture overall, gaming culture is really tied around to that instant gratification. That's a big reason why, mobile games and battle passes and things like that are what they are, is that they really promise that sense of instant reward. Monster Hunter looks at that, at least the older Monster Hunter games. I think Wild's kind of overcorrected in this instance, but that's a subject of another video for another day. But Monster Hunter really balks at the thought of instant gratification, especially in the older titles. It understands that there is a universal principle in that you're needing to really work and invest in these things in order to get the reward that you want. Take that to other real life things, funnily enough, gardening. I am not much of a gardener, and I think we've all are at least familiar with the concepts that go into it. And it's not like that you can just plant a plant and then immediately expect it to grow within the next couple of days or couple of weeks without any sort of intervention. I mean, there might be some plants that are like that, but overall, it's something that you have to work at, you have to take care of in order to really reap the rewards of it. And I really think that there is, I really do think that comes out in Monster Hunter, and I think it is a due lesson for a lot of us, gamers in general, or just, people and squirrels in general too, is that we really need voices in our lives occasionally, many times actually, I should say, that tell us no. No, you cannot have this right away. You need to work for this. You need to understand the weight of something before you really are trusted to interact with it. I see that a lot with my kids, and I think we can all remember those times whenever we were small where, we wanted something and it wasn't just handed to us. So, and I think grinds speak to that ultimately at the end of the day, and I think that's part of why it makes them so compelling. So anyhow, that's the end of this hunt. Love Glavenus, love this game. Please, if you disagree with anything that I say or want to talk more, throw up your comments in the comment section below. This has been Silver Thunder, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.